What's up, everybody? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel, and then follow me on social media on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter so you guys don't miss any of our content over the course of this season. All right, let's talk some basketball. Jason, I'm a very sad Timberwolves fan after finding out we traded Cat. I'm trying to find the positives. Is it freeing up cap space? Apparently, Dante and Randle have big contracts, so we're at a net worse off than before. Or it could be something else. With no Cat, we were less equipped to take down Jokic and the Nuggets. I need some help to cope. So here's the thing. I don't know how any Timberwolves fan would feel good about this deal in the short term. And the main reason why is, like, if you go on a Western Conference Finals run and you've got a star who's 22 years old, or however, I think Ant's only 22. Ant's young, but you got a young star like Ant that's on his way up. Run it back. Run it back and try it again and see what you can get done. That's what any team would do, right? So there's no doubt that, like, throwing a giant wrench in things, because here's the thing, even if you're of the opinion that Dante DiVincenzo makes you better and Julius Randle's just a better player than Cat, even if you think that, it's theoretical. We haven't seen it. And so, like, you take a team that made it to the Western Conference Finals and you don't give them a chance to run it back, that's obviously frustrating. But there's a different way to look at it, and it's through the lens of the long term, right? So because Karl-Anthony Towns had so much money left on his deal, because Julius Randle's a free agent after the season, because Rudy Gobert has a player option after the season, and who knows, maybe you can work out a longer term, more team-friendly deal after that. We'll see what ends up happening. But you go instantaneously into a much more flexible cap situation. Now, there's a huge price to pay there, and the price is now all of a sudden there's major question mark over this season, right? Is this Julius Randle fit going to work? Like, and look, here's the thing. I've slept on it a few days now. I'd be lying to you guys if I didn't say I hated the fit. I love Anthony Edwards. He's probably my favorite player in the league of this generation, right? Like, when the LeBron Steph crew all retires, Ant's probably going to be my favorite player. It'll be a different type of thing and won't be the type of emotional attachment I had to LeBron because I became a fan of his when I was a kid. But, like, Ant's going to be my favorite player. I'm rooting for him. I want him to succeed. I think his best trait is that he's the best driver of the basketball in the NBA right now. And so I hate the idea of putting him next to Jaden McDaniels, Julius Randle, and Rudy Gobert. I think that's a 3-4-5 that is a disaster for spacing whenever Ant has the ball. So, like, I'd be lying if I told you guys I liked the fit. That said, there is upside. Dante DiVincenzo is a really good player that I think Minnesota Timberwolves fans are going to love. And Julius Randle, when healthy and in rhythm, I think is a better shot creator than Karl-Anthony Towns, which is a nice number 2 option to put next to Ant. So there's upside, but there's risk. And so the way that I would look at it is Tim Connelly basically is telling you that he wants to sacrifice a little bit of the right now sure thing element that we saw from last year's Minnesota Timberwolves team and replace it with some long-term flexibility while also maintaining some of the upside within this season. And that's the thing, because, like, here's the deal. Let's say you run it back and you lose in the Western Conference Finals again, and then you're in cap hell for a few years and there's not much flexibility for you to do anything, versus maybe it goes south with the Julius Randle fit and you lose in the first round, but you have more ability to surround Ant with talent later. And again, this is where we have to kind of look at NBA history. NBA history tells us that even the all-time greats, they don't really start to kind of figure things out at a championship level until 26, 27 years old, right? So it is more important for you to be flexible at that point. That said, I don't see any universe where in the short term it's not annoying. Because, again, you just went to the Western Conference Finals. You lost close games to Dallas. Ant is just rapidly ascending. The defense was frightening. It was how you beat Denver. Karl-Anthony Towns was a huge part of how you beat Denver. There's always going to be that part of me, and I'm sure lots of you Wolves fans that are like, why the hell didn't we run this thing back? But I think I just view it as a long-term kind of attempt to try to maintain some of that flexibility like we talked about. I wanted to spend a little bit of a follow-up talking about the Knicks, just after thinking about that a little bit more. How do you put together a lineup without Dante DiVincenzo and with Karl-Anthony Towns on the floor and with Mitchell Robinson kind of like out of the equation for now, but potentially rejoining the equation. There's a couple different options that they could go with. I talked about Deuce McBride in the show that we did on the actual night of. Another way to look at it would be Josh Hart potentially playing at the 2. I don't like him at the point of attack as much as Deuce McBride. You could also kind of flip that and kind of have Mikal Bridges functionally operate as your 2, guarding the other team's best guard, and then have Josh Hart function more as a 3. You could also size up. Like you could go with Precious Achiuwa at the 4 and put him next to Cat with OG and Mikal Bridges. Now you're just huge and rangy and athletic. There's, I think that there's even a version of this when Mitchell Robinson comes back where you just go big. There's been a lot of like people talking about like, oh, Cat as the rim protector, this isn't going to be enough, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, if you're good enough on the perimeter, I think that's not as big of a deal. But the other element of it too is what if you had a big look? Like, what if you went with Karl-Anthony Towns at the 4, Mitchell Robinson at the 5, kind of like what Minnesota was using him as, and you have this massive look. And look, there are going to be lineups or matchups where you need more perimeter speed and that doesn't work. But like, I'm a big believer in championship teams need to have multiple looks. You need to have versatility. You need to be able to play a 2 big lineup. You need to be able to play a 3 guard lineup. You need to be able to have different looks that you can go to depending on what the game calls for. And so like, as far as the Knicks go, like to me, having Karl-Anthony Towns at the 4 or the 5, those are good problems to have because of all of the upside that Cat brings at a position group where you were originally very thin. But again, there's a bunch of different looks that they can go with, but those are just some examples. All right, let's look at, I've got 2 more questions for you guys. I got a Bucks one and then a Celtics Jayson Tatum question. Dude, if you drop the Bucks in the West, they would be the 4th best team and it wouldn't be close. The West is overrated. The Mavs got destroyed in the finals and they took care of the now weakened Wolves. Other than those teams, the Nuggets and the Thunder are okay. Blazers, Spurs, Warriors, Lakers, Clippers, Rockets, Pelicans are all terrible with 0 chance. I got a lot of Bucks fans in our last video that really want them to be referred to and respected as like a top tier championship contender. Guys, the Bucks won 49 games last year in the East with Dame and Giannis both playing 73 games. Like, I can't in good conscience on a couple of veteran minimum signings bump up a 49-win team to like top tier championship contender. And as far as the West-East thing, I've said this before, but the West was 650 and 580 versus the East head-to-head last year. They were 70 games over 500 head-to-head against the East. The West was so much better than the East. It was not close. I don't even know how that's arguable at this point. Like, and again, like the Bucks played in the substantially easier conference where you got to play legitimately terrible teams 3 and 4 times in the season and won 2 more games than the Lakers. They were with Dame and Giannis both playing in 73 games. Like, I'm a believer in the Bucks upside. I think they have potential to enter into the top tier contender tier if a bunch of things go right for them this season. But in my opinion, it's irrational to look at what we saw last year and think that they're one of those top teams in the league. It just, I'm rooting for it. I want Dame to have a big bounce back year. I want Giannis to play like an MVP. I want DeLon Wright to pan out. I want Gary Trent Jr. to pan out. I want Taurean Prince is a good player. I think Bucks fans are going to like him. There's a lot of upside there, but it's upside. It's theoretical. The reality is Dame and Giannis played 73 games last year and you won 49 games in a very weak conference. So like, that's why right now the Bucks are just like the Lakers, just like the Suns, just like everyone else. There's potential. There's a lot of good that could happen, but it hasn't really materialized to this point. That's what this kind of group of teams is, if that makes sense. Last question, and we'll get out of here for the night. What criteria do you believe Jayson Tatum has to meet to be the MVP? In recent years, they've shown that being the best player on the best team is not enough. And I personally believe that his highest value is in versatility. With that being said, he's most likely not going to average 35 like Luka Embiid. So what type of season do you foresee him needing to attain that award? That's what he would have to do. I mean, the thing is like, whenever you are Like there's like three different criteria that I've always used for my kind of interpretation of MVP. And I think it kind of loosely follows the way most media members look at it. But it's like, who's the best player in the league? Who's the best player on the best team in the league? And then like, who's the most valuable? Like who's specifically like driving the engine, so to speak. And the problem is like Tatum's going to get hurt in two of those categories. Like nobody thinks he's on the tier of the top best players in the league. And nobody thinks he's specifically driving the Celtics bus because of how much talent they have. So like in order for him to win the court of public opinion in terms of like winning over the voters, I shouldn't even say public opinion, media opinion. I think it would require him having a dominant season. He would need to look like one of the best players in the world while he's playing in the games. Then the Celtics would have to win over 65 games. At that point, I think there would come a point where people would be like, this is undeniable. This guy's playing like one of the best players in the league. This is the best team in the league. But the thing is Jayson Tatum more or less plays like a second-tier superstar most of the time. And that sort of thing on a dominant team is just not going to win MVP votes. And so like it is what it is. But like if it was purely just who's the best player on the best team, you're right. He'd be in the driver's seat, but that's just not how it works. And so like if Tatum goes out this year and he just crushes from start to finish and hits a bunch of clutch shots and averages 32, 10, and 6 and just kicks everyone's ass all year, I think there's a good chance that he wins MVP. But it's just, that's kind of unrealistic even within the scope of what the Celtics are trying to accomplish. They're very talented. They've got a ton of good players. They don't need Tatum to average 32. And so the best, here's the thing. I've encountered a lot of this. This is the last thing I'll say about it. I've encountered a lot of this from Celtics fans. And I want to be clear. Like, I know that there's a large portion of you guys who are Celtics fans who are reasonable and realistic and understand what's going on. But there's a lot of like complaining from Celtics fans about how much credit they're getting, how well regarded that team is, how people view Jayson Tatum in the hierarchy of the league. And it's like, here's the thing. Who cares what anybody else thinks? The best thing for Tatum and the Celtics to do is to go whoop everyone's ass and just rack up the accolades. Just keep winning, keep stacking the chips, and then eventually everyone will have no choice but to acknowledge your greatness. Like at the end of the day, if you're worried that I think Tatum is the 7th best player in the league and you think he's the 3rd, who gives a shit what I think? Tatum needs to go out there and win games, and if he does, he's going to keep getting trophies, and as he keeps stacking up the trophies, it becomes undeniable, right? Like, all of this stuff is just semantics at a certain point. This is just debate. And so, like, that's the thing. I understand how you Celtics fans feel. You want Jayson Tatum to get the credit that he deserves. You want everyone to acknowledge that team for what they accomplished. But at the end of the day, Tatum's not going to get an MVP. It's very, very unlikely. So what's the best he can do? Go kick everyone's ass and get another Larry O'Brien trophy. And just stack them up. Just stack them up. Again, like there's the same thing happened to the Warriors with 2017 and 2018. Like no one was giving them a ton of credit because of how much talent they had. And it was a lot of talk about KD joining the super team and all that kind of stuff. But you know what? You just rack up the titles and then you look back and it's like, well, they have 4 of them now. You know what I mean? So like at the end of the day, like if the Celtics are concerned about what kind of media like acceptance they're getting, just focus on the ultimate goal. And then at a certain point, no one will be able to deny how good you are. All right, guys, that is all I have for today. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting the show. We'll be back on Wednesday with another team as well as some another season preview as well as some media day reaction. I will see you guys then.